Hello and welcome to PeachFuzz, Lakepoint Sports and Prep Baseball Georgia's high school baseball podcast. I'm Grayson Rosen, joined by Prep Baseball Georgia Scouting Director Hudson Graham and Prep Baseball Georgia Assistant Scouting Director Ian Smith. How you guys doing today? A lot going on in high school baseball with the playoffs getting started.
Yep. One down day, and then it's nonstop for the next 4 days.
Yeah,
it feels like Christmas Eve almost for baseball. So it's gonna be a good week.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of things going on. We got all of our brackets finalized. Everything's there, and there's a whole lot to talk about. We're going to be going through every classification, talking about some of the best first-round matchups, some key games, some tough roads to a championship, some easy roads possibly, and then just kind of discussing everything in the playoff picture from what we know. So if you guys are ready to get into it, I know we've got quite a bit to talk about. If we want to go ahead and start with 7A.
Yeah.
There is so much talent in 7A, so many great teams up near the top. They're all over the place. I'd like to start in this region where we see Walton as kind of the powerhouse for that region. How do you guys look at that one? What does Walton's road look like?
Yeah, I think Walton might have one of the easier roads in 7A, looking at it, clearly on paper as we're looking at brackets as they come out. I think they have one of their toughest matchups in the entire bracket in their first game, facing the left-hander from Mountain View and Cooper Williams going to Ole Miss. I think that matchup against Dane Moeller and Walton will be one of the biggest matchups of that bracket. But if they can get through that first matchup and through that first series with Mountain View, I think they have one of the easier roads in the bracket to make it down. Facing teams maybe in the next round like Forsyth Central or North Cross, teams they both match up well against. And I think if they get through that, it should be a fairly easy road for them as they move forward.
Gotcha. And
yeah,
go ahead, Hudson.
I think the East Coweta and Marietta game is kind of a game to keep an eye on. Marietta's got a lineup that can really hit kind of 1 through 9. We saw them at Georgia Dugout Club. With a lot of these teams, it's going to come down to the arms. East Coweta, they're coming off of a pretty big sweep against Carrollton to secure that 1 seed. So that was a big sweep for them. So they got some momentum coming in, and then their experience. They have the some upper class guys that have been in this situation, and then I think you can't count Grayson out over as a 3 seed on the other side of that one. They've played some pretty competitive games in a tough region. So like Ian said, I think Walton is kind of the one to get through that side of the bracket, but there's definitely some teams in the mix that you never know what you're going to get. But other than the Walton, I like that Marietta East Coweta matchup to start things off.
Gotcha. And then if you flip to the other side, we've got this group with Parkview, North Paulding, North Gwinnett, a wealth of other teams that we've talked about quite a bit this season. Who do you think makes it out alive? Of course, Parkview, the big name, a top team in the nation. Do they have the best chance to get through, or could some of these teams contend?
Yeah, that one's a tough one. I think that's the toughest side of the bracket in this 7A with Parkview and North Gwinnett matching up with each other. But North Gwinnett, it's no small task over there with Mill Creek and Cherokee. Cherokee always seems to find their way into the playoffs, and they're coming off of a sweep of Wheeler, which was big for them. So I think that they're going to compete. I think once these guys get in there, it's a brand new season. Everyone's 0-0, so it's a new season for them. And then you look at North Paulding on that other side, and North Paulding, I think, obviously, if they get past Campbell and see Parkview, they lose that home field. But the North Paulding fans travel really well, and I know that's a big part of these state playoffs in Georgia. Obviously, going to Parkview would be no slouch, but that place would have a ton of North Paulding fans in attendance as well. And they have some pieces that we really like too. Ian got to see them recently, so I think that then Parkview and North Gwinnett are kind of the ones to keep an eye on. But that Campbell North Paulding matchup is a big one to start the series off. I like what Campbell has in junior Joel James, about to commit Boomer Dunn. So they got some guys too. So I think that's the biggest first round game in my opinion. Other than the Cherokee Mill Creek, I think that'll be a good one as well. But yeah, that side of the bracket's going to be fun to see how it shakes out.
Definitely. Let's talk kind of about this group with Buford and Hillgrove, Brookwood as well. This is a tough one as well. I think some people might look past this one and maybe favor that top right bracket with Parkview. But Ian, what are kind of some of your thoughts, Peachtree Ridge in that group as well?
Yeah, I think with Buford being a 1 seed, I think they have one of the toughest brackets on this side, especially with teams like West Forsyth and, like you just mentioned, Peachtree Ridge, who has a big starter on the mound, and Josh Evans, who can give you a win anytime he goes out there. Facing Kennesaw Mountain in the first round's tough. They have some sneaky bats. I've Proven Tud, a shortstop playing third base, is really good. They have a good Kennesaw commit and Peach Jersey who plays first base, and a left-handed arm on the mound who can get a win anytime out there as well. I think Brookwood, like you mentioned as well, will be able to compete with that strong pitching lineup that we've talked about so much on this podcast already, with Charlie Foster, Jackson Barber, and then in the bullpen you have Clinton Harris as well. But talking about Buford and getting past Kennesaw Mountain first, and then facing Peachtree Ridge or West Forsyth in that next round is huge. I think West Forsyth has a chance to make a run in this region. They're a tough team, full of bats. They got some sneaky arms led by Connor Williams, Georgia commit, 2024 right-hander, who fills it up on the mound, and can really keep a team in a game any night of the week. And looking past that a little bit, the Hillgrove matchup with Westlake is huge. Hillgrove's on a hot streak to finish the year. They got a couple bats and uncommitted Carson Vick and uncommitted 2025 Avery Wilson as well. They have some arms that can win games, that can compete. And I think it's a really just overall a quality division. And I think Buford, said in the beginning of this, is going to have one of the toughest overall roads to get to a Final Four appearance.
Gotcha. And Hudson, did you have anything to add for that group?
Yeah, I like Hillgrove. I think that they're going to be kind of the, obviously getting the 1 seed on that other side. They're really not going to be sneaky, I guess you could say, but I think that they got a chance to get out of this thing. I think that Hillgrove Brookwood game will be obviously the biggest game if it gets to that point. But yeah, I like them. The West Forsyth Peachtree Ridge, and that side's super competitive, like you had mentioned. But we'll see these 1 seeds, and Kennesaw Mountain's no short as a 4 seed either. So that one will be fun to watch shake out as well.
Gotcha. And now we move into this final group on this 7A bracket. It's kind of headlined by Lowndes, but multiple other great teams in this group. What does Lowndes Road look like? Because we've kind of seen them over this last couple of weeks kind of drop down in the rankings. What's kind of happened down there in Lowndes?
Yeah, no, I think that, we talked about them a couple times on here, and they lost some couple 1-run games to some quality teams. But yeah, it's funny to see Newton go down and play them just because, Newton sneaking up and beating Parkview a couple weeks ago, and then we got to see them at Batterford Bartow. They're an athletic team led by Caden Brown Jr., two-way guy for them. So that's going to be a good matchup. I mean, it's no Newton going down there and playing at Lowndes. That's a tall task for sure. But that second round matchup, Carrollton Harrison, I think that's one of my favorite games in this 7A bracket to start things off. Harrison's kind of been winning some games. I know Ian's mentioned kind of overachieving this year, but they're led by Colin White, who can get a win, anytime out in a 3-game series. And then got some bats and Dom Stevenson, Andrew Komar, and Grant Largent on the mound as well. Sanford commit. So that's going to be a good matchup. I know I mentioned I really like Carrollton, but that's no easy road, especially seeing Harrison. And then, if they were to see Lowndes, obviously that's a big matchup there. But can't count South Forsyth out. They made a late run to secure that 1 seed in that region. They kind of just beat up on each other. That was a tough region to get out of. A talented Denmark team, didn't even get in, wasn't able to get in. So that's a tough region to come out of, and I think they got a good road, on their side. North Cobb, they kind of had a late push late in the season. Tequila, they got 2 arms, they can beat you with Jared Glenn and who's the other guy? Lost his name off the top of my head, but Reeston Durham's leading their lineup. He's gotten hot to end the year. So that's another fun one. This 7A, each side we go around, it's going to be fun to watch.
Definitely. Anything else you guys want to touch on before we get into the 6A bracket?
I think that covered most of it. There's going to be a lot of good teams in 7A. There's going to be a lot of. I think we're going to see some upsets earlier than not. Teams are going to be pushing up on each other early, especially in that Buford bracket and in that Parkview bracket. It should be a murderer's row in 7A as we get going here this week.
Yeah, just like any bracket, just finishing up March Madness in basketball. Like, you think what's going to go on in these, and this 7A, there's going to be 4 teams, in the Final Four, maybe 1 or 2 that we're calling, but there's going to be some upsets for sure, because these teams are, like I said, fresh start coming in, brand new season for them. You get a completely different team once you get into the playoffs. So excited to see how it works out.
All right, well, let's move into the 6A bracket then, and we'll start in the same place. We've got this group here with Noonan and River Ridge, Lassiter, Evans, Houston County, and a number of other teams. A lot of teams that we've been talking about quite a bit this season make it into the same region in the bracket. Makes it a really tough road for any of them.
Yeah, this bracket it's a stout one for sure. We've loved Noonan coming in. I think they were kind of the dark horse coming out, obviously winning a bunch of games, but just being there, in that spot this year for the first time. They're really young, they're super talented, but I think that they get a tough matchup with Lassiter and that River Ridge. That game to start, Lassiter is super experienced. They have a ton of committed seniors. They play really well together. It kind of reminds me of the team they had 2 years ago when they actually made it to the state championship. So that's a tough road there. And that first round matchup against River Ridge. River Ridge has been playing some good ball, and they got 3 arms that can go out and beat you depending on what they're going to bring to the table that day. So that's going to be a fun one. Evans, they keep climbing up. They were into the Power 25 last week. And then obviously you got that Houston County North Atlanta game, and that's no easy game to start the bracket as well. So yeah, Ian, what you got on that?
Yeah, I think you hit it with Noonan. I think they were a hot team. They're coming off, I think, 20 straight wins or 21 straight wins before. I think they might have ended the season on a loss, I believe. But they're a team that could be as hot as anybody. They get Gainesville in the first round, a team that I believe they match up really well against. But like you mentioned, that River Ridge Lassiter matchup right there in the first round is going to be huge. River Ridge has some bats that could get hot at any time. They have 3 junior bats in Gavin Hamrick, KJ Hart, and Grant Hollier. There we go. Before I lose my train of thought here, talking about so many teams that can give you quality at bats. They have a Chipola commit, as well. Losing names here a lot as well, but I think that lineup is extremely strong and can give Lassiter problems. As we mentioned, how experienced the Lassiter lineup is. They have a strong 2025 arm on the mound, and Daryl McDowell, a former future gamer as well, who can give them a win in any 3-game series. So I think the winner of that series can have a lot of momentum moving forward, and facing that Noonan team in the next round could be huge for a team going forward. If they could pull an upset over that Noonan team, could force them into a Final Four run.
Gotcha. And Ian, I'll stick with you. I want to get your opinions on this group straight across from them on this bracket, where you've got a couple of teams we've talked about, a couple of teams that we haven't really touched on all that much. But, Marist, Rockdale County in here, Glenn Academy, Blessed Trinity, Sequoia, North Forsyth, Alexander, a couple of teams that, we've gotten brief mentions from throughout the year, but haven't really touched on a ton. Who's a team that you really like here?
Yeah, I think North Forsyth is maybe a dark horse team for this 6A region or 6A class overall. I think there's going to be a lot of upsets in this bracket. We talked about this bracket before we came on the air here today. It's one of our favorite brackets overall in the entire playoffs. I think Marist has got a tough road ahead of them, facing possibly Glenn Academy in the next round, and even facing Lee County in the first round is a tough matchup. Blessed Trinity has a tough one against Sequoia that could go 3 games with any chance. They have Sequoia has a really good arm. They can throw in Ian Maria, who can give them a win against a really tough Blessed Trinity lineup. And if that happens and that game possibly goes 3 games, that's a sketchy one for Blessed Trinity. But that North Forsyth and Alexander matchup is huge. North Forsyth has 3 arms that can give them a win any night of the week, with Brady Holbrook, Braden Weems, and Braden Siebold as well. And they have great arms out of the bullpen with like Sam Moore, and then some uncommitted sophomores on the plate. Excuse me, I'm just stuttering over my words here. But Ellis Aldridge and Bryson Germanenko are 2 bats we really love as 2026s. That could be huge in big spots for them. Holbrook's huge at the plate as well. And I think they're just a team that can get hot at the right time. And getting past a team like Alexander, who got hot late, but still a little bit inexperienced and young for this moment. And if they can get by this first round matchup and possibly against a team that could be beat up in the second round, it could be huge for them making a run in the 6A class.
Gotcha. And let's move down into this bottom left group. It's very interesting. Not any teams right now that are in the top 10 for the classification rankings, but a couple of teams we've had to talk about a little bit this year, Pope and Allatoona, who match up in the first round, teams we've definitely talked about. But Woodward Academy and Appalachia take home the 1 seeds in this group. Very interesting road for any of these teams to make it to the Elite 8.
Yeah, the Pope Altoona matchup is huge first round. Both of these teams have been in this situation before. You can never count Pope out getting into here. They nearly beat Blessed Trinity for the region title. They had to come up with a sweep, I believe, and Blessed Trinity ended up getting the last one to clinch the region. But Pope is they're there. That's all that really counts. They know what to do since they've gotten to this point. And John Stutzer will lead the way for them, and he's the type of guy that can, change the whole dynamic of a team and get them rallying, to make a playoff run. But Altoona is no slouch either. Cooper Underwood, Georgia Tech, future gamer leading the way for them. But I really like this Thomas County Central, St. Pius, South Effingham, Woodward Academy kind of quadrant here. I think that we're going to try to get out to one of those games. Just seeing South Effingham or Thomas County Central. Thomas County Central has some guys. They beat Houston County earlier in the year. They got Reed Gaines, who's a big 26 two-way player for them. And then their coach is really excited about some young guys that they have as well. So that kind of quadrant, those are some interesting matchups. Some South Georgia teams coming up here. And some of these Metro Atlanta teams, they have no idea, they haven't got to see these South Georgia teams, even like the Marist Lee County matchup. Lee County's beat they've played some really tough teams in Houston County and Tiff. So these guys can compete, even though they're the 4 seed coming out of that region. They got some guys that compete. I really like that matchup. Appalachia's kind of a sneaky 1 seed. They're in that region with North Forsyth and Gainesville. Traver Park and Judah Powell will lead the way for them. So they've been rolling this year, had some big region sweeps, some big region wins. So that will be a interesting bracket to see what happens there.
Well, Ian, I'd like to get your opinion on the next group here. A very strong group, kind of the antithesis of the other. You've got a Tift County team, Dunwoody, who we've talked about, Brunswick, who finds themselves in the top 10, and then Etowah versus Roswell in the first round, South Paulding, Habersham Central. It seems like we've talked about just about all these teams throughout this season. It's going to be hard to find a top team in this group.
Yeah, I mean, you say that, but I think Etowah has a path to the Final Four if they want to be. I think they're one of the more complete teams in the state. We've talked about them a ton, obviously. In that first round matchup, they have Roswell, which is going to be a tough matchup. But sending out the trio of Matthew Sharman, Caleb Hughes, and Dimitri Angelakos as a 1-2-3 on the mound is as good as it gets outside of Brookwood in the state. Those 3 guys, led by extremely talented lineup 1 through 9, can beat anybody. I mean, I think that's just as easy to put it. I think that Roswell matchup will be tough, but getting past that, looking at a second round matchup potentially with South Paulding or Habersham, another teams that they match up well against. They're getting hot at the right time. They've went back and forth early in the year with some tough losses. They lost to good teams and they've battled back. I think Tift has a tough road as well. I think Tift in that Dunwoody matchup just came off a big win this past week. Let me check real quick who they beat this past week. A top 25 team in our power rankings that they're just finishing the year with a win over is huge for them. And then they possibly could face Tift could possibly face a Brunswick team in the second round that is as strong as it gets in South Georgia. They're loaded with bats, led by 2026 second baseman Brett Hickson, who we love a lot here, has been huge in a bunch of showcases. And he should be huge this summer as well. But that's a team that can get hot at the right time. And I think outside of Etowah and maybe a Brunswick team, I think that could be a crash course for the Final Four there.
Gotcha. Yeah. And any kind of overarching team in this entire bracket that really sticks out at you? Obviously, there's so many teams we've talked about. We've talked about how close it is up at the top in 6A. Any team in particular that you think could win it all?
Yeah, I know we talked about this a lot. I hopped over to see Etowah right down the road here to end the region, and they put it on Creekview pretty good. But that's who I'm kind of leaning towards here. It's hard not to. In one of their games, they went with their 2 lefties, Oliver Bandy and Jackson Rose. They got some experience time in starting, so I think they got some ideas in the bullpen, and with that super talented pitching staff, that's gonna could be a gamble, but could really pay off and save some arms for them down the road. But you can never count out Houston County, Noonan. Houston County knows what they're doing when you get there, and I think that Pope and Appalachia. I think if that's the matchup in round 2, I think that one of those 2 teams has a chance to get to that Final Four. So that's one that I think to keep an eye on. And then I know I've mentioned it, and Ian has it as well. But North Forsyth. I really like them. I like their arms on the mound, and if they can click off some, successful starts, I think that they got a shot.
Got it. Yeah, I had to ask that question just so I could hear Etowah be mentioned. As an
Yeah.
alumni that missed out on the first state championship and then missed out on the next trip to the state championship, I love to see that they're doing well. So let's talk about 5A now. Maybe a few more teams that we really haven't seen now that we get kind of into the lower divisions. But we'll start in that top left one where we've got a Villa Rica team that had an outstanding start to the season, kind of slowed down there at the end, but still win the region. And then Kell, Cass, Ola, amongst other teams that are great. And we've talked about quite a bit. Who really emerges as the top team here?
Yeah,
I mean, if I'm looking at it,
Go ahead, Adi.
No. I think just talking with some guys and looking at some, some schedules and some rosters, like I think that Ola, I like Ola in it. We were going to try to get down to see them against Hudson County, but just didn't work out. They've been rolling. I think they can really hit. Brady Purin is an arm for them that's been really successful this year. We got to see him some over the summer, but that Ola Greenbrier matchup round 2. It's going to be really big. That's one that we've got circled. If it happens, we'll definitely be there. But then as you move down, Kell and Villa Rica, I think that are the other two to keep an eye on. We had a guy get over and see Villa Rica against Woodstock, and they're experienced at the top. They got a really talented 1 through 5, Easton White, Caleb Perry, I believe. So they got some bats, but Kell, you can't count them out. They had that really big, really strong stretch of games. I know that Ian was at one of those, the one that kind of snapped their winning streak. But yeah, I think that Ola Greenbrier is the one I have circled the most, but can't count out Kell or Villa Rica.
Gotcha. Anybody in particular for you, Ian, that you really like in this group?
Yeah, just mentioning that Kell lineup. It's very senior led by Bryce Clavon and Caden Marcos, Jacob Young. They're very senior led, and if they can get some quality pitching down the road, I think there's a chance they can get hot and give some teams some trouble. Cass is led by a really quality 2-way player in sophomore Chase Tatum, who's been huge this spring for them. That batting over 400 is huge on the mound as well. And I think that matchup should be extremely fun. But I think Huddy touched on everybody that should be a favorite in this division. I think Ola was a team for me that I really like in this region. And I think Kell can give anybody a run if their bats are hitting.
Gotcha. Well, Ian, I'll keep it with you to go to this next group because we've got a bunch of teams here. Cartersville definitely emerges as a favorite in this group, but teams like Locust Grove, Jefferson have gotten quite a bit of shine. And then teams like Decatur claim a 1 seed here in this group. Can anybody here contend with Cartersville?
I do think Cartersville has one of the better chances to come out of this bracket unscathed. I think one of my favorite matchups in this entire bracket, potentially in the second round, with Jefferson facing Cartersville, and not Eston Simpson facing potentially a Ryan Johnson if he's back healthy on the mound, could be one of the bigger pitching matchups we see in these playoffs. I think Locust Grove is a sneaky team as well. They have some bats that really hit. Melvin Blocker is a guy that I like. He showed out a few weeks ago at the Battle for Bartow. I was a little injured early in the season, but just came back really healthy, a switch hitter with a bunch of pop from both sides. I think they're a team that can get sneaky. They have a good arm on the mound, and Braden Lawrence and Mercer Commit, who can be really big for them as well in a 3-game matchup. Statesboro and Decatur, both quality teams. Statesboro being a South Georgia team that a Decatur team has not seen, so I think that could be a really fun matchup in round 1. And I think just outside of that, I think Cartersville having the best shot to make it out of this region is the best way to look at it. They're a loaded team. We saw Ryan Johnson go down at Battle for Bartow, but he's projected to be back for the playoffs. They have some quality arms in Nate Russell, Logan Shrewberry, and Andrew Purdy in the bullpen and at the plate. They got big bats, Caleb Daniel, and Aiden Larkin, Cole Crawford, one of our top 10 2027 catchers as well. They're just a quality team, and I think they have a quite easy run to make it out of this region.
Awesome.
Or out of this bracket, excuse me.
Yeah.
I'll throw in one thing there just to kind of keep in the back of brains. Jefferson is coming off of a tough loss to Loganville for the region. So I think that group is going to be really, really hungry to kind of bounce back from that. And then that Jefferson Cartersville, that's a rematch from last year. So I know they're going to be wanting to get some revenge there. So that's one that, Ian talked about. We got circled for sure, but I think that Jefferson team is really motivated to, try to get something going.
Fantastic. Well, Hudson, I'll kind of pass it back to you here in this bottom left part of the bracket. We've got quite a few good teams we've talked about quite a bit. Loganville, Cambridge, McIntosh, Coffee, and a few others. This one, I think it's kind of hard to pinpoint an exact favorite out of this group.
Yeah, I think I have mine. Honestly, I think that the Coffee Boys with Coach Cy Jones, I think that they got a really good chance to get out of this one. I really like them. They've been rolling this year. They've had some big win streaks. They got Michael Strickland, two-way for them. He's been hitting bombs. He's been giving them their number one start on the mound. But have that Chamblee game circled. Chamblee has a big arm in Cooper Lewis, left-handed uncommitted junior that I popped over to see a couple weeks ago. So that's a game that we're going to be at starting tomorrow at 2:00. So that's the game I got circled. But, McIntosh kind of gets mixed in there. I didn't even realize they were on this side, but that's a team that's experienced, state championship last year. So I think that they are a team that's, has the experience to keep them rolling. I think that Coffee McIntosh series will be really, really big. But Loganville, I mentioned Jefferson trying to bounce back, but Loganville's running off of a high, beating them on a walk-off for the region. So I think that Loganville is a team that's, like I said, been there before. I mentioned on the last podcast, put me out of the state playoffs back quite a few years ago. So they know what to do when they get there. And then Cambridge, I went to see them against GAC, and I like them. Diego Becerra, he could shut down any team in this bracket if he's got his stuff going. So that's a quad to keep the eye on. But the boys, I think the Coffee guys might have a shot to get into that Final Four.
Gotcha. Well, Ian, I'm going to let you kind of get after this super strong group here down in the bottom right of the bracket where we've got tons of teams who we've talked about, Union Grove, GAC, Flowery Branch, kind of the top three teams we've talked about, but this is going to be a tough one for any of those teams.
Yeah, I think GAC has the best chance to come out of this division. We've talked about it before. They have a great number one on the mound in Conrad Kaysen, who I'll be out to see tomorrow afternoon at 4:00 in their doubleheader against Dalton. That would be one that's huge. They have some bats in Johnson DeBose and Jacoby Bowens and Eli Hanna, who have just been huge for them all year long. Trace Joyner, is somebody that Hudson saw last week who's been big on the mound for them at left-hander. They got a closer, a 2026, and Denzel Watkins, who's huge as a dual sport guy for them, and it can be a huge upside arm who's got some great experience this year and can be huge in the playoffs as he's been getting better and better as the year goes on. And I think they're a team that as you look at this region with Flowery Branch, who's had some tough losses, and they're kind of young as they come back. They can have an easy run if they can get by Dalton in that second round matchup. Ware County is a quality team as well. And you mentioned Union Grove as well, who's had some huge wins this year, so I think they can give any team trouble as well. But I do think Greater Atlanta Christian is the best chance to come out of this bracket and best chance to possibly win a 5A state championship in this region.
Gotcha.
Excuse me, in the place.
Yeah. All right. I'll kind of pose the question. I'll pose the question again. Is there an overall favorite here to you guys? I know Cartersville is your top team right now in this region. Are they the favorite, or is it somebody else around here?
Yeah, I think it's riding on Cartersville. I think this has been in the works. They've had a couple early departures from the playoffs. So I think Coach Tucker's ready to get it done. But I think that GAC Final Four, I think that's kind of where I'm leaning towards. I think that's going to be your winner. Is if both those teams make it there. But yeah, a lot of good teams in the mix. But I think that's kind of my two glaring favorites in this 6A classification.
What about yourself, Ian? Are you kind of in the same boat there?
It's hard to go different from that.
Yeah.
I think Loganville, being a returning state champion, has an extremely tough road to make it back. And I think that's one you could watch as the team with experience coming off a high win in the region. And like I mentioned, a returning state champion. So they can make a run, but I think they have one of the toughest roads in 5A. And I think GAC and Cartersville are clear favorites in this class.
Definitely. Well, let's get into 4A, and we'll start in this top left part of the bracket here. Quite a few pretty good teams. Not a lot of teams we've gotten gotten to talk about much this season. Does anybody emerge as like a favorite? Anybody that sticks out there, Hudson?
So that Walnut Lubbock game, I think, is probably the biggest game in this in this classification to start things off. Walnut Grove being a 4 seed, that's probably the toughest region in the state potentially, with Seconder, Walnut Grove, Cherokee Bluff, North Oconee, East Forsyth, and North Hall. So East Forsyth and North Hall didn't even make the playoffs. So that just goes to show how strong that region is. So love it. Obviously having a great year. That's a game that we have circled, that we will most likely be at. But Walnut Grove has 2 frontline lefties in Thomas Burke and Sam Martell that can shut down anybody in this classification when both of them are on. So I think that's the biggest game of this bracket. I think that's one of the biggest games of this entire playoff series in this 4A classification. But I really like the Holy Innocent Central matchup. Central has some guys that we've seen in the past. They got some young guys, and Jake Ivester, a junior future gamer that plays outfield for them, and then Holy Innocents with Taylor Fuller. So that's a matchup I like as well. So I'm kind of looking towards that side. And then West Lawrence, Ian could touch on West Lawrence a little bit. I like them as the 1 seed there. And then Islands has a lefty Army commit, I believe, Callaway, I believe, Johnny Callaway maybe. So I like them as well. Having a big arm like that is always good. But that Love It Walnut Grove is that game that I have circled.
Gotcha. And then let's hop over to that other side of the bracket here. We've talked about a couple of these teams. Obviously, Stars Mill kind of been around the top tier or top team conversations for the whole season, really. Heritage Catholic's great. Pace Academy made a great late run this season, found themselves into those top 10s quite a bit. So, Ian, who kind of emerges as your favorite here? Obviously, Stars Mill kind of has the advantage.
Yeah, it's hard not to look Stars Mill's way. They're a team that I've been extremely high on throughout the year. I've mentioned them as having a lineup that could compete in 5A or 6A as well. They're as deep as it gets. But looking past that, I think Pace Academy is a sneaky team at the top as the 3 seed here. I think they're led by an extremely dynamic bat in Terrence Keel, a Texas A&M commit, dual sport commit, one of the fastest players in the country. Can hit for power, can run, can play center field. I think he can impact the game in so many ways that that can win any night of the week. He's the type of player that can do that. Looking past that, they have a 2027 and Davis Morrison playing first base, who's got a ton of power at 6'1", 220. Really showed out in the looks that I saw this spring, and as well as Miles Mador, a 2025 catcher uncommitted, who's got as much power as anybody on the team. I think they're a team that can get hot. They have a tough matchup in the first round with Seconder, but I think if they can get past that, they're a team that could make it run. And look at a Final Four or a Elite Eight matchup with Stars Mill. That could be a big one.
Gotcha. And let's get into this bottom left part of the bracket here. We've definitely talked quite a bit about Cherokee Bluff. Talked a little bit about Cedartown and Druid Hills, who match up in the first round, as well as a couple of the other teams here. Hudson, who kind of emerges as your favorite from this group?
Yeah, before I roll into them, I wanted to throw Benedictine out there in that bracket. That's kind of the team that I have circled. I think that Benedictine Stars Mill matchup will be really big. Benedictine has some guys we really like in Landon Ludwig, Davidson commit, future gamer, and then they have a big right-handed junior uncommitted in Brooks Bradshaw. And then you have North Carolina commit, Parker McCoy, and then you have another sophomore, Mason Diamond, a catcher. So that's a group that I really like. We didn't get a chance to see them this year, but they pretty much returned the same team that they had from last year. So I think that's a really big game. I don't know if they have the arms to hold back that Stars Mill lineup, but Landon Ludwig has a shot to beat that lineup. He's got some electric stuff. So I just wanted to mention that matchup. Keep an eye on that one. But yeah, Cherokee Bluff is kind of the favorite for this one. I really like their lineup, but like I mentioned, their pitching, it can go out and be pretty shut down at times, but at times it can be a little spotty. So I think a LaGrange team that's experienced, kind of scrappy, you could say. I think that they're gonna put up a fight against them, but also like Wayne County, we got to see them early in the year. They got a freshman, Jeff Craven, playing shortstop for them. That's pretty good on the mound as well. So those are kind of my 3 teams I'm kind of looking at there: Cherokee Bluff, Wayne County, LaGrange. So we'll see what shakes out there, but I would say Cherokee Bluff's bats take care of that one.
Gotcha. Ian, anything you wanted to add to that group? Or
Yeah, I'm pretty high on Cherokee Bluff. I'm pretty high on the Cherokee Bluff Stars Mill collision course for the state championship. I think that's the best case scenario for this class. I mean, not best case scenario, but I think the most likely scenario for this class. I think both those teams have the deepest lineups in the N4A, and I think match up extremely well for a matchup in the state championship.
Gotcha. Well, I'll keep it with you to talk about this bottom right part of the bracket. Not a ton of teams we've gotten to touch on much this year, but the likes of Perry, who's seen themselves into that top 10 classification ranking, Stockbridge team that you got to always talk about, and same goes for North Oconee. Anybody here that you really like?
Yeah, I actually have a sneaky suspicion that Stockbridge is going to come into the playoffs with riding a high. They're a quality team. They face a really strong division or a region schedule this year. They faced some good teams. They had some big wins, including a win over Pace Academy at a game I was at last week or a few weeks ago. They're facing North Oconee in the first round, who's coming off 2 straight state championship. They just lost their head coach for a role down the road, and now they're a team that's kind of in disarray going into the playoffs. And I think if Stockbridge can pull off that upset in the first round, I mean, wouldn't even consider an upset as a 2 seed versus a 3 seed. But I think if they can pull that win off in the first round, they could be a team that's riding as high as anybody going forward. They are led by some big quality bats, a lot of uncommitted seniors that are experienced, looking for their moment. So I think Stockbridge is a team that can make a run in this region. You look at teams like Perry and Cairo; they're quality teams as well. Same with Westminster. But I think Stockbridge is my dark horse team to make a run in the state playoffs this year.
Gotcha. And anybody overall in 4A that you guys are really looking at to make a run?
Yeah, it's tough. I kind of go back to that Walnut Grove Lubbock game. I really like that one. Walnut Grove has played some really quality teams. I think if we're going for, a biggest dark horse as a 4 seed, I think that they're kind of my go-to. But I think I'm sticking with Cherokee Bluff on this one. I feel good about Coach Kemp and their lineup. I think that as much as pitching plays a role in this, I think that I'm not sure if they're going to see enough arms that are going to be able to shut that lineup down. So, like I said, Walnut Grove, 4 seed. If I'm taking a big gamble, I could go with them, but I'm sticking with Cherokee Bluff with that lineup.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's go ahead and get into 3A. Obviously, this is kind of where we get into some teams that we haven't really gotten the chance to see much of, but in that top left of the bracket, you have a team, I'll just kind of particularly point out Mary Persons, who ended up as a 1 seed here. That's a team that all the way back in the classification rankings, I asked Ian if there was any teams he was looking at here to jump in, and they did, and they've had a great they went a great second half of the season that got them here, got them that 1 seed. Is it really just them in this group, or is there a couple teams here that contend?
Yeah, so that's a game that I'm actually going to be at tomorrow versus Long County. Talking with some guys, Long County, there was a big 3-way tie in that region. So that's a tough 4 seed for them. I think that they're ready to compete, but I think that, they weren't super excited with that matchup, to be honest, to the 4 seed. So they worked really hard to get that 1 seed in that region. But that's a tough draw there. Long County, we did a preview on them early in the year. They got a big arm. And then they got Kenny Pickens, catcher, big bat for them. That's an extra base machine. So that's one that that I really like. Like I said, we're going to be there tomorrow for that one. And then I know Ian could touch on Sandy Creek a little bit. That's a 1 seed that we need to definitely talk about a little bit.
Yeah, Sandy Creek's a team that's got hot at the right time. Getting PJ Green back from basketball, he's a Missouri commit playing center field, and he came back and turned into one of the hottest players in the country. Ended up finishing the season hitting 600 with 21 extra base hits and just 69 at bats, which is pretty outrageous. He's hit 7 bombs. He plays a great center field as well. And look at another senior for them, Alex Stallworth has been huge on the mound and to the plate for them. And they have a sophomore in Cameron Layfield who's been huge as well. Got a lot of experience for them. And I think they have some arms that can compete in big moments. And facing a team like Park County in the first round and then possibly facing either Wesleyan or Gordon Lee in the second round will be tough. But I think they're a team that can make a run. And they're getting, like I said, I've talked about a lot of teams right now. I mean, in this segment, getting hot at the right time. And I think that's what Sandy Creek's doing. And I think they could make a good run, especially as a 1 seed in a region or a bracket that's winnable.
Gotcha. And if we go over to that next side of the bracket, this is a super strong group here. Harlem and Pickens claim the 1 seeds, but teams like Peach County, Adairsville, Cedar Grove, so much talent here in this group. Who comes out of it at the top?
Yeah, I know that, Harlem and Pickens were both kind of, probably not too happy about getting on the same side as one another, even though that was kind of inevitable without a team doing something crazy in the region to get that 2 seed. But that's the big matchup for me. But then you can't really look past Peach County and a big arm in Jackson Peavy that's pretty much ran the season unscathed this year with some pretty striking out over half of his batters he faces, I believe. Ian sent me a stat on him the other day.
61.2.
Oh
Yeah,
my God.
so that's a crazy future gamer there. But I think Harlan and Pickens circle them. I think that's going to be your Elite Eight matchup. And a really, really good team is going to take it to the house after the Elite Eight. So that's one that we have circled. Looks like May 4th and 6th. So I think that one's inevitable. I think that's one that we're going to see, we're going to be at. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, Ian, anything to add to that group?
Not too much. I think Hebron Christian is a team to watch out for. They're led by a strong two-way guy in Dean Livingston and George Commit, 2025 arm and bat, who was a former future gamer as well. He hit nearly 400 for the team this year, hit a bunch of bombs, and was the number one on the mound. I think that's a guy that can lead this team into a run. Cedar Grove's a tough matchup in the first round, but looking past Harlem and Peach County, I think that second round matchup with PV versus Harlem is one of my most anticipated matchups of the playoffs, somewhere I guarantee I'll be at. And I'm just looking forward for this region overall with Harlem being the favorite.
Yeah, well, let's get into this bottom left one. I'll keep it with you, Ian. We've got quite a few top 10 teams here. Franklin County, Dawson County, Morgan County, all top 10 in this week's classification rankings. This is going to be a super tough region, or a super tough group in this bracket.
Absolutely. I think looking at the outside looking in, I think Franklin County has the best chance. They're led by our number one 2025 and Ty Peoples, who's had a tremendous junior season. He's one of the best bats in the country as a center fielder, and he's made some big appearances on the mound for this team as well as a closer. So I think he's a huge factor for this team. They potentially face Dawson County in the second round, who's an extremely experienced and quality team. We saw him at GDC. They have some great bats and Sawyer Bearden among them. I think they're a team that can really make a run as well. Morgan County, team that could make a run if they were fully healthy. I think they're going to have some trouble with the team they bring into the playoffs right now. Losing Ty Tillery potentially for the playoffs is tough for them. One of the best 2026 arms in the state, and I think will be huge for the playoffs. So not having him will be tough for Morgan County. And looking past that, I think that just really talking about that Dawson County Franklin County second round matchup is huge. But even more so, that Dawson County Bremen matchup in the first round is going to be big for them, and whoever comes out could make a strong run.
Yeah. Let's get into this last part of this bracket. There's a couple of pretty strong teams here, but I feel like nobody really emerges as a favorite here. Who kind of sticks out to you, Hudson?
Yeah, I think this one's a little wide open. I think Ringgold, I think it's kind of my first instinct to go to them. They had a really strong start to the year. We got to see them early on against Pickens. So I think that they're a talented group led by, what's the big arm? Haggard, Sebastian Haggard, yeah. Sebastian Haggard, yeah. So they'll have him as a big arm for them. Obviously, made a big run for them last year. So they're kind of the team I look at there. Oconee County, they got Will Johnson, Georgia Tech commit 2025, pretty high up in our 25 rankings. So that's kind of my outlier there is Ringgold. But, Thomasville being the 1 seed, I think you got to keep an eye on them. So we'll kind of see how that one shakes out.
All right. Well, I'm going to ask you guys the same question. Who's the overarching favorite in you guys' minds?
Yeah, the winner of the Pickens Harlem game. I think I'm going to go with that little bit of a vague answer. I really like Pickens. I like the 1-2 punch in AJ Rice and Connor Schaus. Trace Ledbetter just committed to Young Harris. One other guy just committed to Reinhardt. So I think that they're eager for some revenge from last year. So, I think I'll just go ahead and go Pickens instead of giving that matchup there. I think I'll go Pickens. But I think that there's some teams that you can't count out. I think that there are going to be teams in the Final Four that we did not predict. I think there's going to be some upsets. So, but yeah, we'll go with the Dragons.
Gotcha. Let's go ahead and go into 2A, and we'll start in this top left one where we get 2 top 3 teams in the classification rankings potentially matching up in the second round with Redan in Mount Perrin, I would assume you guys are kind of thinking the winner of this group that goes to the Final Four is going to come from that matchup.
Yeah, I think so. I think that Fellowship Christian Redan series, I think that's a one that could be a potential upset. Coach Oliver and the crew and the really young crew are rolling off of a kind of miracle comeback region win to get them in the playoffs. So they had a really tough road and ended up squeaking in barely. So I think that they're hungry. I think that Coach Oliver has a really motivated group in them. I know we've talked about them kind of leading the way down the road, but yeah, Mount Perrin Redan, I think that game's interesting. So I think that Mount Perrin is probably the favorite to come out of there.
Gotcha, Ian. Anything to add for that group?
No, Mount Perrin, I've seen them a few times this year. They're led by a huge arm on 2025 right-hander and Michael Fredette that can get them a win at any 3-game matchup. Up to 92 with a above-average slider. He was really good against North Cobb Christian, which could potentially be another matchup in this state championship, I believe. They faced each other twice this year, and I think that's one we're looking at as one of the potential Final Four matchups with those two teams. But no, not too much to add on this bracket here.
Gotcha. Well, I'll let you take the lead on the second group here. Kind of the big name here is Rockmart, but a couple other teams there that could definitely contend with them. What's kind of your first thoughts with this group?
Yeah, looking at Rockmart, I think they have the best chance. They're a team. They're led by a 2025 left-hander Hunter Adkins, who's probably one of the best pitchability arms in the state, regardless of class. I've talked to a bunch of guys this spring, and I think he's been mentioned as much as anybody as one of the toughest at-bats that they've seen, which is crazy for a guy who's sitting in the low to the mid-80s, but he works the fastball to both sides of the plate. He's somebody who can get a win against any team in 2A, and I think that's a team led by Nayland Housey on the offensive side that can get hot. They're young. They've had big matchups this spring. I think they can be huge in this region. I think they're the team I'm looking at the most.
Gotcha. And then Hudson, I'll kind of let you take the lead here on this bottom left group. You've got teams like Cook and Model and Appling County who kind of sit right there at the edge, maybe right outside of that top 10 right now. Who kind of emerges as your favorite coming out of this group?
So I look right at Appling County, but then I slide down right there to see Walker and Model. Model's a team that I really, really liked. They ended up getting beat by Rockmart for the region title. So I think they're going to be kind of hungry for more. Reese Grodman's led the way at the plate and on the mound for them this year, but they have some uncommitted junior bats that I really like, and Hudson Latimer, Jared Turhan, Jonah Witt is a freshman. It's kind of emerged for them. So I like Appling County, but I'll look at that Walker Model game with Walker having Tyler Fallman, who just beat North Cobb Christian in a big game. So I look at those three as kind of my favorite to come out of that bracket.
Gotcha. And then, Ian, this is a super strong group that we've got here to round it out, where you've got North Cobb Christian, Jeff Davis, Callaway as well in this group. Obviously, North Cobb Christian, the number one team in this classification, but certainly some teams that'll give them a tough route.
Yeah, again, North Cobb Christian, the team that I've obviously been high on all year long, team that's led by a bunch of quality seniors and underclassmen that have hit Asher's the bomb on the mound as good as it gets as a high school pitcher. Is going to give you 5 innings every single night. I think that team. I think that Jeff Davis, North Cobb Christian matchup in the Elite Eight would be huge. I think Pierce County is a team that could make a run as a 3 seed. I think they're a little bit underrated. Hold on 1 second here as I pull up their stats. They've had some big wins. They were 10-5 in the region as well. They're a team that I think can make a run if they get hot at the right time. But looking past North Cobb Christian and Jeff Davis, it's hard not to look at North Cobb Christian as a favorite overall in 2A to look as another run to make another chance at the state championship to go back-to-back.
Gotcha. Well, who's the favorite for 2A overall?
I'm sticking with North Cobb Christian, like I just mentioned. Okay. I think they're the most complete team. I think looking at them on the mound and at the plate, they're pretty hard to beat if they're on. And I think if you're looking at that Mount Perrin possible matchup in the final, I think Mount Perrin has a chance to win that because they know who they're playing and they can make a run, but it's hard to not look past North Cobb Christian. Yeah.
Mount Perrin and North Cobb Christian are kind of the clear favorites for me. Keep an eye on Jeff Davis down there in that bottom as that 1 seed. They went undefeated in region and they played some really quality teams this year in Lowndes and in Harlem. So they know what it takes to beat these really good teams. Keep an eye on them, but I'll give Rockmart kind of my dark horse pick. I think they got a good road to come out of there. But yeah, matchup against Northrop Christian in the Final Four. So keep an eye on them. So we'll see how all that shakes out.
All right, well, we'll go to Single A Division II. We won't go too in-depth on the groups here. I'll just kind of let you guys take a couple of teams around Division II that you guys like. Hudson, we'll start with you. Anybody in particular that really sticks out for Division or Single A Division II?
Yeah, just going through this, Sheley County gets a bye, the only bye in the state. So they have the momentum going straight into the Sweet 16 with a bye. And they just beat Tift County 2 games. So they just beat a top 15 in the state, 2 games. They've had a great season. So they're rolling. I think they're one to keep an eye on. Washington Wilkes is a super athletic team. We got out to see last year a little bit. Wilcox County has Jake Howell, Georgia State lefty, future gamer for us. So those are kind of my guys to key in on there. But Sheley County having those 2 big wins against Tift, I think they carry all the momentum into this division or Class 1 D2 classification.
Gotcha. And what about yourself, Ian? There's quite a few pretty good teams scattered about this bracket.
I believe Bowden has a chance to make a run as well. They're coming off a 5-game winning streak at the end of the year. They had some big wins over Charlton County this year as well. I think their team, they're pretty experienced as well through the lineup, and have a couple quality arms that could win games in big matchups. I think they're a team that I'm looking at, as I'm not too familiar with this overall division, but I think Bowden's a team that I think can make a run.
Gotcha. Well, let's talk Division I then to round it out. Anybody in particular, Hudson, that really sticks out to you for Single A Division I?
Yeah, there are a lot of teams I like in this Single A Division I. It's hard not to go Prince Avenue as the clear favorite to go back-to-back. They got Judson Hartwell leading the way, Will Goff, Mason Banks on the mound. The list kind of goes on and on from them. But then, you get down into that bottom bracket, you got to look at Athens Christian to Crawford County. Crawford County, we do our Player of the Week and Diamond Notes every week, and the coaches are always sending in guys that have really big weeks for them. Andrew Hammock is kind of the name that stands out there, Kennesaw State commit for them. So those are kind of my 2 teams in that section. And then moving on over, Kings Ridge is kind of my favorite to come out of that, but they do match up against Social Circle, who's been in that spot before. So that'll be a really good matchup, Kings Ridge versus Social Circle. That'll be one that I'll definitely be at with Kings Ridge having the 1 seed. They'll be back at their home place, which is right down the road. So I like those. And then, moving on into that top quadrant, Tallulah Falls, Pepperell are kind of the 2 that stand out for me, and then Heard County. Pepperell, had an outstanding season. Didn't get a chance to get over to see them. We tried to, just didn't get the chance. But yeah, I think there's a lot of teams in this class that have a shot, but Prince Avenue will be kind of the clear favorite for me.
Gotcha. And what about yourself, Ian?
Yeah, I have to mention Pepperell. I think their team coming off a 26-3 season, which is extremely strong. They're led by JP Kilgo at the 2025, a bat who can hit for a ton of power. It can score. They score a ton of runs as a team overall. I think they're a team that as good as anybody can be in this Division 1A outside of teams like a Prince Ave or a Kings Ridge. Meddar's a team who I think got hot at the right time. They're led by Rustin Rigdon, one of the top 2024 bats in the state. I think he's back healthy and can score and hit as much as anybody that you could find. And I think they're a team that can get hot if they get some pitching at the right time, can be a team make a run, especially as a 1 seed. They got hot in the region. They're facing a pretty easy bracket down there in the bottom left. So I think they're a team that can make a run as well. Dublin, another good team. We saw them get some big wins late in the season. But outside of Prince Ave Christian, Pepperell, and Kings Ridge, I think they're the 3 favorites for me moving forward.
Yeah, one thing I will mention with the Prince Ave, they will most likely face up against Woodville Academy in Game 2, who has a big arm in Peyton Robideau. I know Ian got out to see them the other day. So I think that's kind of a key game. I think Prince Avenue can hit. I think their bats will take care of business. But Mason Banks versus Peyton Robideau, Game 1, if it looks like that, I think that's a good matchup that Woodfield, Robideau could take care of that lineup. But I think that Prince Ave lineup is just, really too strong for any other arms to be able to shut it down.
Gotcha. Well, that's all of them. That is all the classifications here in Georgia, all 8 of them, all the brackets, all the games, all the matchups, all the favorites, everything you could have possibly asked for from these guys. And obviously, there's so much games and so much baseball to be played over these next couple weeks. What kind of game or what games you guys trying to get out to? Obviously, there's so much you guys want to get to.
Yeah, tomorrow, quite a few. I mentioned Married Persons in Logan County. I think I'm headed to that one. Ian, probably GAC versus Dalton. Get to see them, get an early look at GAC, make sure they got what it takes, for a playoff run or a state championship run. Yep. And then, looking into Thursday, it's tough. It's so hard. We're going back and forth on all the games that we're going to go to. We want to see North Forsyth. I kind of want to go see either Thomas County Central or South Effingham, a team we didn't get to see in the regular season. So it's going to be tough to decide.
Gotcha. And, obviously going forward, there's tons to play. There's tons to do. There's tons to look at. Make sure you're coming back every week. We're going to be giving updates throughout the playoffs on everything going on. Ian, was there anything you wanted to add to that? Any of the games in particular that you got your eye on?
Not really. This is my first Georgia playoffs ever, so I'm fired up to get into it. We're starting tomorrow with JC, like Hudson mentions, moving on to Thursday, potentially at a Cherokee Mill Creek matchup, where we'll see Reed Worley face a really quality Mill Creek lineup. I think that's what I'm really looking forward to. I've been looking forward to the Mountain View Walton matchup for game 1. I think that's a huge one. I think it's one of the bigger matchups you can find in 7A in a first rounder. And I think going forward, just that bottom half of that bottom region in 7A is going to be really one to watch. I think there's going to be a lot of upsets in that one, so I'm excited to see it.
Gotcha. Well, as the weeks go on, you guys will be giving all your updates here on every game that you go to, all the games you're going to be at. So make sure you guys come back listening each week, and let's kind of talk about what's going on this weekend. Obviously, tons of GHSA state playoff games, but as well as that, we've got the Lakepoint Challenge this weekend up here at Lakepoint. 20-team field for 14U starts up on Friday. Got 19 games on Saturday to watch, including 3 games of bracket play there. So tons of competitive baseball there in 14U up at Lakepoint this weekend, as well as some 13Us. And then, of course, state playoff games to watch. So anything else you guys want to touch on before we get out of here?
Yeah, we're going to try to stay up to date on these brackets as best we can. We got our graphics with all the brackets coming out probably here in the next 5 minutes or so. I think they're teed up to go out. So throw your picks in there, who you got winning it. So other than that, we'll stay up to date on the brackets. We'll update them as they go. We got a link on the website that has all the matchups. We'll update scores. We'll update, as we move into the Sweet 16, and then we'll have our running playoff scout block that'll be loaded with notes. So we'll get to see double headers, and then we'll try to maybe mix it up for if game 3s that happen on Wednesday. So we'll have tons of notes in there. We'll get it probably posted up Wednesday, and then it'll have stuff added, daily as we get out to these games. So super excited to get this thing covered. Should have a couple guys out other than Ian and I. So we'll try to cover these playoffs best we can, and then look forward to seeing these teams move on.
Fantastic. Well, make sure you guys are going and visiting the Prep Baseball Georgia website to keep up to date with all of that stuff. We'll have it linked in the description here on YouTube. But for now, I think that's going to do it for us, guys. Thank you guys for joining me. Thank you guys for watching. And, we hope to see you guys out at the fields up at Lakepoint this weekend, out at the games. So, with that being said, we'll see you guys next week. Enjoy the games. Thanks.
Yes, sir.